All right, so now that I have my artboard ready to go, which is what this white space is called, I'm going to draw a triangle because I'm trying to recreate this scene. So I'm going to start by selecting the pen tool, which is this tool right here. It's not the tool with the line coming off of the nib of the pen. It's just the simple pen tool. And then I'm going to have to free draw this triangle. So I'm going to do my best to kind of get that equilateral triangle going. So for the pen tool, what's great about it is that whatever you draw is all one shape. So that's why I'm using that over the line tool, because the line tool draws individual lines that I would then have to connect together. So I'm trying to cut down on a step. So to use the pen tool, you're going to tap once, and that's going to start your shape. So this is my starting vector point. So I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'll fix it after it's totally drawn. And I'm going to click again. So when I click again, you're actually going to see a few things happen. So you're going to see your line show up. It's going to start turning into the shape over here. And then with my pen tool, different options show up. So whenever it's floating on the artboard with nothing below it, it's just going to be a regular pen tool. If I go over this vector point, this anchor point right here, it's going to have a subtraction sign, a minus sign. And if I was to click on that, it would actually remove this point. So I could delete that. And then I have this close, this circle that shows up right here. And that is my close a symbol or close a shape option. So I'm going to show you how I use that here. I also have the plus sign here, so I can add points onto this line, which then I can pull those into different directions. So I'm going to make my third point over here for my triangle. And now it's an open angle. It's not a finished triangle. So to finish it, I'm going to go up to my top point, and I'm going to make sure I can see that circle. If I'm just a little bit off, the shape won't be closed. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to get me a pretty wonky triangle. So I want to now edit the triangle, and the nice thing about this is I can use these box points that are the selection box around my shape, and I can use those as kind of a guide. So I can see, okay, my top vector point is way too far over to the right, and my bottom left vector point is just a little bit too tall because it's coming up above this selection box, which is nice and straight across. So I'm not going to be able to move the individual vector points with this selection tool, which is this tool right at the top, but I can use this selection tool. So this is pretty consistent across most vector-based editing softwares. So if you use Adobe Illustrator, if you use Inkscape, they're all pretty much the same when they've got these two different options. So I'm going to select this one, which is going to let me actually select and move these different points. And the nice thing is there is a slight snap that's happening. So I can kind of feel or see really whenever my vector is snapping into alignment with this vector. So now I'm going to try to find the center point, and you can go down and just bring it down and like see and then try to carefully move it up. Or you can just kind of eyeball it, which is what I'm doing. And then if you go back to your main selection tool, it's going to show you that box again. And you can see I've got it pretty good. If I wanted to, I could keep on kind of messing with that. And I'm zooming in by just using 2 fingers, spreading them out on the trackpad. You can also use the magnifying glass here. But I can just grab this and shuffle it over just a little bit if I want to. And see, it's going to get a little bit closer, but really that does not matter. So this shape is pretty good now. And the last thing I need to do before I can kind of leave it to float until I've got more stuff going on is I need to change the color. So I'm going to try to get it as close to the original red as possible. Down here is where you can change color. I can select this white fill box, and I can go up. I'm just going to do a straight red. So I just move it all the way up here, and you can move up and down the rainbow to go to these different colors. And then you can change the actual hue of the color by moving around. So I'm going to go to the top right of the red, and I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to make sure it does not have an outline because I don't want that black outline. It's not very visible, but it's there and I know it's there. So down here, there's the hollowed out square, and then there's the solid square. The solid square is clearly the large main fill, and then the hollowed out square is the stroke color. So that's going to be my outline color. And to get that to be completely clear, I just click down here on this white box with the X in it, and that's going to completely remove the outline. So this is a purely red shape on a purely white background. So after this, I can really start to create all of my different shapes. Down here is the actual shape tool. So the rectangles are going to be really easy. I can just start to make my different rectangles, and I need to change that to black. And you can just click off and start drawing more shapes if you want to, or you can move everything around as you're going. Remember, you move things around by going to this top selection tool and actually clicking on each thing and deleting it or moving it. You can zoom in on something by spreading your fingers out on the trackpad or using that zoom magnifying glass. And you can tilt things. So let me show you how to make that smaller rectangle. So I'm going to go and make sure I have that selection tool selected so I know my box is outlined. And then if I go to the top corner, any of the top corners, the selection tool cursor is actually going to turn into a curvy arrow. So you can see it's now no longer a straight side to side or up and down. It's got that curve to it. So I can turn it and try to kind of get it as close to how she has it as possible. And I can manipulate it a little bit, but if I wanted to actually make it narrower, which I do, I would have to, I'd have to kind of play with that. So get to know the tools. You can bring things in by doing this. It might be easier to actually narrow things by going to make it a vertical or a horizontal shape and then manipulating it. There are keyboard shortcuts for different keys. So if you hover over it, you can see that to get back to that selection tool, if you tap V on your keyboard, it'll come up really easily. So it'll kind of help you as you're going to be able to switch back and forth between these shapes really quickly. Or not shapes, but tools. You can also, if you're having a hard time selecting something, so if I got Red Riding Hood too far over and I just can't get to her because she's behind this shape and I don't want to move this shape, you can go over to your layers, grab on, and then kind of move your shape over. If you actually move this center square, don't worry about it. The cool thing about that is that if you move it to a certain spot, this becomes the anchor where you are then able to kind of rotate an image around. So it may be helpful to you, it may not, but as soon as you click off, it's going to go right back to the center because that's not really something you're going to be using that frequently. So it's okay if your shape goes off of your artboard. When you save it and you download it, that'll get cut off. So anything that's going off will get cut off. You might want to expand your shapes just a little bit past your artboard so that they do get a little cut off, because you don't necessarily want those to be have that white ghosting around them. The last thing I want to show you before you're able to kind of really play around with creating is how to change the background. And it's kind of silly, but the way you change the background is by going to that rectangle shape, drawing a big rectangle that's the same size as your artboard, changing it to whatever color you want. So I'm going to try to get that purple. And then you can either hold down whatever your kind of power key is, so Command or Control, and the left bracket, and that'll move it down. Or you can see it was kind of shuffling down as I went. So you can actually move it down. I can move this guy down, and now it's going to be on top of different things. So you can sort of play around with that. See, I can get Red Riding Hood over this if I put it on top of this shape. So those are two ways you can change your background as far as like the layering of it goes. Go ahead and play around, and I'm going to make one last video that shows you how to save this and download it so you can actually put it on your Google Classroom when you're done. But focus for now on making your image.